They said they had a conversation about taking me first instead of Tim Duncan. And I talked to Pop. I was like, "Is that true?" This was after I retired from the NBA. I was working in broadcasting for the Pacers, actually. And I went down for a post-game interview. And I was like, "Pop, one of the guys has put me up to this. I have to ask you, was it true that there was actually a conversation about picking me instead of Tim Duncan with the first pick in 1997? He goes, "Yeah."
All right, so welcome to Life After Sports, everyone. We have a great guest today, and Scot Pollard, former NBA player. He played for 11 seasons, right?
Yes, sir.
We really want to get into the stuff with Kansas and everything. I know me and Greg were very excited to talk to you about that. You playing there in the 90s and everything during those days. And then obviously all the stuff that you've had after your career. You've been into broadcasting a little bit. You've been into acting. A lot of stuff there. So we have a lot of stuff to talk about today. So we'll get right into it. So Greg, if you want to just take it from here, and we'll kind of get into the little bit of your history there, Scott.
Hey, Scotty P, thank you for coming on. I've known you a long time, especially playing for my hometown Kings. We developed a friendship. You played in my golf tournaments and supported me. I'm going to say thank you for all that. But
Yes,
I went to University of Miami. So when you talk about the U, you know what I mean. That's it's sort of symbolic when you talk about the University of Kansas for basketball, right? What is it like to play basketball? College basketball at the University of Kansas.
Well, I got to be perfectly honest and admit that I didn't really know much about the history of Kansas basketball. I signed there because of Roy Williams. I was from California. I was a San Diego kid, and I had no desire to go that far east to go to college. I wanted to stay closer to home. I wanted to go to UCLA. Or I actually verbally committed to Arizona because I liked Lute Olson a lot. And they took me to a party, and there's a lot of pretty girls there too. But
I had the same party.
Yeah, but no, Roy won me over, and then as I became a Jayhawk, the thing that sold me about how it was different out there was when I was on my recruiting trip, they took me to Midnight Madness, which at the time was at midnight, and it was the first practice of the year, and they were full. And it's a free event. It's not like they're selling tickets, but it was full. 17,000 people. I'm from San Diego. No one goes indoors in Southern California. Indoor sports don't do very well in Southern California, because there's a lot to do outside. So people don't really want to go spend 3 hours inside very often. And so I'd never seen 17,000 people in the same place in my life. And I walked in, and there's people cheering, and people knew my name, and I'm just a 17-year-old high school recruit, And so that really was like, whoa, this place is different. And then real quick, one story about like really welcome to Kansas was freshman year. Jock Vaugh and I were roommates all 4 years. Jock.
Yeah.
And we were roommates all 4 years. But freshman year, we're playing against Indiana. And Damon Bailey is absolutely just giving us the business. I think he ended up with 33 points or something like that. Close game. I've got blood all over my jersey. They take me out of the game. They couldn't even get the blood out. I don't know who I made bleed, but somebody was bleeding a lot. And I had so much blood on my jersey, they couldn't get it off. So I had to switch jerseys at the end of the game. I'm wearing number 54 with no name on the back just because that was the only jersey they could get me. So I'm in there at the end of the game. Jock, I go set a screen for him. He uses it, then comes right back around and just launches a three at the buzzer. Good game winner. Awesome, right? Like the crowd goes crazy, all that. That's normal. We got back home to our apartment, and our door was covered in notes. Jock, you're the best. Love you. Rock, Chalk, Jayhawk. Rock, Chalk, Jock. Like that was when we were both like, whoa, this isn't Southern California. These people care. And so then you start developing that love for the traditions. And you start learning things like I learned about, why Lawrence, Kansas was even founded. It was founded by people from Massachusetts to stop the spread of slavery westward because Missouri was a slave state. And so Lawrence, Kansas was actually very instrumental in the Civil War and the Emancipation Proclamation, because there were battles between Missouri and Kansas, and Lawrence was burned to the ground twice by pro-slavery terrorists, basically. And so those events in Lawrence, Kansas, really started that border war, and that's why I miss that border war, because when Kansas and Missouri were in the same conference, that was a real border war that actually began in bloodshed. So there's just so much tradition there. I could go on and on and on. I don't want to, but I could go on about the tradition there that I learned as I was a Jayhawk, as I was there, and since being in college there. Just love the place, love the city, love the whole history of basketball, and I love that somebody, one of our donors or alumni, bought the rules and brought them to Lawrence, Kansas. So they're at Allen Fieldhouse, the original rules of basketball. And, that was their first head coach, was the inventor of the game. We've had 8 head coaches since 1898. Only one has a losing record, and it's the inventor of the game, Dr. Naismith.
Yeah, there you go. You guys are like the Pittsburgh Steelers, only 5 coaches. You guys have 8, you know what I mean, since basketball's been there. But, San Diego, I know your hometown, and I mean, it's a special place for me too, playing for the Padres and going to the World Series. I mean, tell me a little bit about, and the people, a little bit about your upbringing. Did you grow up in La Jolla and go to that prep school in La Jolla where, so many athletes come from? Or did you grow up with Jock Jones and Terrell Davis and Kevin Mitchell and Marcus Allen and all those guys? You know what I mean? Because people don't know.
Yeah.
San Diego is huge. They produce a lot of athletes. You know what I mean? I mean, the talent is people don't understand for how small that city is, the talent that they produce,
It is. It's a diverse place, man. There's people. There's pockets everywhere, And I lived in the rich pocket. I lived in Del Mar, and Del Mar is one of the most expensive places in the world still to live.
Yep.
And when we moved down from Utah, when I was a little kid, I was born in Utah. We moved down from Utah. My dad was unemployed. We had no money, and we moved to Del Mar, California. I still can't explain it. I don't know why. I don't know how. We were on government assistance for a while. I mean, we were poor. Like, my friends are driving BMWs and like Corvettes to high school, and Porsches and stuff. I'm walking, So it was. I was the poor kid and surrounded by very rich kids. Torrey Pines High School, it produced a lot of talent itself. John Lynch, legendary football player and now the GM of the Niners, was just a couple years ahead of me at Torrey Pines High School, and his little brother and I were teammates. So, we're just it is I guess not like considered a major sports market, but yeah, there's a lot of talent that comes out of there. I was getting comparisons to Bill Walton because Bill Walton went to Helix High down there in San Diego, and I'm not the player. I wasn't the player Bill Walton was, but that's a hell of a compliment when you're coming from the same city and they start mentioning you with the greats. Played against Tony Gonzalez in basketball and volleyball, the great tight end. So we were the same age or similar age, and so it's cool to run into guys that are from San Diego and reconnect. But my upbringing out there, man, we were poor. Like I said, we were on government assistance. I don't know how we paid the rent. I don't know how my dad made it, he was just working job after job after job trying to make ends meet. And, then he passed away when I was 16 years old. And that caused my mom to move in with one of my brothers up in the state of Washington. And so I lived the rest of my junior year. I was just kind of couch surfing. I wouldn't say homeless, but I was staying at friends' houses, and I was like, okay, I've been here a little too long. I'm going to go to another friend's house. So I finished out my junior year sleeping on friends' couches, and then my mom was like, you have to move to Washington. So she made me move to Washington State with her for my senior year. And then basketball ended. We got to the tournament. We lost in the quarterfinals of state, won player of the year in the state of Washington. And we were nationally ranked at one point. That team was really good. We choked. It was my fault. But so basketball ended, and I had always played volleyball, which is an indoor sport, is an actual sport in the high school there. And I was player of the year in San Diego the year before, so I wanted to go back to San Diego, graduate with my friends, and play volleyball again in the spring. And I was 18 at that point, so I broke my mama's heart, and I left. I went back to San Diego, got a job, got an apartment, played volleyball, went to prom, did all the senior stuff, graduated with my friends, and then I left. I haven't lived in San Diego since then.
Wow.
That was the last time I took residence there, and always wanted to go back, but could never afford to live where I wanted to live, which is where I grew up.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's probably the prettiest city in the world, and like you said, the most expensive. You probably saved a lot of money not moving back. You know what I mean?
For
Because
sure.
yeah, and it's crowded.
Yeah.
But like I said, so where were you projected to get drafted? I mean, so now you go through. Now you guys are rock stars at University of Kansas. You and Jock got the whole campus. Loving you. Wherever you walk. I mean, we won't talk about NIL yet, but I'm just saying. But there was no NIL before the NIL. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
But I mean, pretty much, you eat where you want to eat, go where you want to go. You know what I mean? And I mean, what was it like? Coming up to the draft. You know what I mean? Where they had you slotted and projected. Life changing.
Uh,
Like you said, you grew up on government assistance, and now you're about to change your life forever. You know what I mean?
yeah. So I played with Greg Ostertag, NBA draft pick, first round pick, played in the NBA for a dozen years. I played with Jock, first round pick, late first round pick, and played for a dozen years. I played with Rafe LaFrance, played for a dozen years. I played with Paul Pierce, lottery pick, played for a dozen years, or more than that in the NBA. So I always knew there were scouts at the games, but they were not there for me. And later in my senior year, Coach Williams pulled me aside. He said, there's some scouts here, son. I said, I know, Coach. I play with Paul Pierce, Rafe LaFrance, and Jock Vaugh. I know there's scouts here. They're like, no. These guys are here for you. And that was the first time that I thought, oh, wow, I've got a chance to get drafted. Because up until then, it had just been a dream. But then it finally was like I was getting some of the shine. I was getting some of the light because I was standing out from just, being a role player with a bunch of stars. And so that's when it started. And then after my season ended, we lost in the Sweet 16. And I went to pre-draft workout camps, and I dominated. I did really well. I was predicted late first round, early second round at the beginning of that. And then all of a sudden, everybody from 20 or 21 said, if he's available, we're taking him. Well, I had gone to work out for Detroit, the Pistons, because they had the first pick of the second round, and that's where they were expecting to take me. But then the word got around that I wasn't going to be there. Every team I worked out with was 21, 22 through 28. There was only 28 teams at the time. And I worked out for all of them except for the Jazz. Quick side story. I would have loved to play for Jerry. He was a great coach. I would have loved to play with Karl Malone, John Stockton. It was towards the end of their careers, but they had just been to the NBA Finals, and I was like, man, I would love to play on this team. And the GM mentioned that to me. He's like, we really want you. We want to take you. We have the second to last pick of the first round. We want to take you. And I was like, I'm sorry, I won't come. I was like, I'm not trying to be a jerk. I said, this is completely my personal life. I said, I'm from Utah. I'm Mormon. My whole family is Mormon. I could fill that arena every home game, 41 home games, and still piss off family members. I said, I don't have that in my bag. I don't have the ability to deal with that many family members asking for tickets or asking for favors or doing that. I said, my personal life will be a nightmare. And I knew that about myself because I'm a giver. I'm a guy that wants to take care of people. I want to take care of everybody. But I knew if I'd gone to Utah, I wouldn't have been able to manage my personal life. So I was like, please understand, this is not an ego thing. I don't think I'm too good for Utah. I would love to play for Jerry. I think he's a great coach, and I want to play for the Jazz. But I was like, my personal life, I couldn't do it. So anyway, Detroit heard the rumors that everybody was going to take me, and they had the 19th pick also. So they took me at 19 because they were worried I wasn't going to be there for the second round. And they ended up taking Charles O'Bannon in the second round. So we were rookies together. But yeah, that was it was a whirlwind month there of just doing college all-star games and workouts and, getting my draft stock up high. And this is another true story. I've talked about it with Greg Popovich. There was a short conversation in the San Antonio front office because, there's a huge Kansas connection there. Coach Pop started at Kansas. He was an assistant coach at Kansas. R.C. Buford was an assistant coach with Larry Brown also, and he's the GM of the Spurs still. And so these guys are there. They've seen Kansas quite a bit, and they've watched me quite a bit. They're probably for my teammates, but they said they had a conversation about taking me first instead of Tim Duncan. And I talked to Pop. I was like, is that true? This was after I retired from the NBA. I was working in broadcasting for the Pacers, actually. And I went down for a post-game interview, and I was like, Pop, one of the guys has put me up to this. I have to ask you, was it true that there was actually a conversation about picking me instead of Tim Duncan with the first pick in 1997? He goes, yeah. It was a short conversation, but yeah. and his justification was that I was just more polished at the time. Tim Duncan had been playing basketball for 5 minutes, and I'd been playing my whole life. And so we had actually played against each other our freshman year when he was at Wake Forest, and I dominated him. I beat him up. I outscored him. I out-rebounded him. I hustled him. Blocked his shot. He couldn't score on me. So he got a lot better, and I got a little bit better. But I was more ready for the NBA at that point. And so, man, what a disastrous decision that would have been for the San Antonio Spurs, though.
Hey, well, being a Kings fan, we had, we've had some of those picks that, you know what I mean, where we've chosen some people over Karl Malone that we should have had, with the pick. But I mean, it's life though. I mean, that's awesome, man.
We end up where we're supposed to be.
I mean, I love those stories. Yeah. He has a plan. He knows where he wants us, and he puts you in the right place. So out of all your teams and all your stops, what do you? I know you're in Indianapolis. I know you guys are still balling. You play tonight, but I'm just saying, where do you feel like the most connection? Like me playing for the Brewers and the Padres, and those would be the two cities out of the five I would call home, like going to right now, with open arms, but by the fans and by the city. What I'm interested to see what would be yours.
I have to answer it two different ways. Where do I feel like I had the best time? Obviously, most of my career was in Sacramento. I feel like that was my biggest portion of my career, most effective portion of my career. The biggest contributor. I started some games, and averaged a double-double when I started there. So that was the best part of my career, was in Sacramento. But I mean, I've been here for 22, almost 22 years now. So everybody here knows me, and they don't consider me some kind of Indiana superstar because they remember my career as a Pacer. I had a broken back. I mean, I wasn't very good when I was playing for the Pacers. It was the final 3 years of my 6-year deal that I signed with Sacramento. So, in a lot of ways, I feel guilty about my time here in Indiana because that was the most I ever got paid. And I was not very good. I was still healing. My back wasn't right. And it never really has been right since. But I was just in Boston, and man, I was there for 1 year. Now, we won a championship. That's great. But man, people around town were recognizing me.
Wow.
And that's rare for a 1-year stint 20 years ago. In 2008, my last year, so 17 years ago. But yeah, like it's been, all the cities I played in, I loved. I loved living in Cleveland. Even it was a fun place. There's good people there. Is it a crappy city in some ways? Yeah, in some ways it is. But there's some really nice people there, and I've met some lifelong friends there. We still keep in touch. One of them just came to my 50th birthday party. So I've made roots everywhere I go. But I have to say, I've just been here so long in Indiana that I just feel like this is the place that I feel the most connection with, even though I'd prefer to have that connection with Sacramento. But I just don't. Without getting too far out of bounds, I don't like the current owner.
Right. It's changed. That's part, well, you know me. I mean, when they were winning 13 games, I had season tickets, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you can recall, I mean, we had that family feeling back then, I mean, everyone, it was, the city was embracing you guys. You guys embraced the city. Now, it's basically corporate America. You know what I mean? You have, it's a different business, right? It's different.
Do you feel that's how sports is?
And the small city.
Do you guys feel that's how sports has
I
gotten?
can say that's how Sacramento
or just Sacramento. Or I kind of feel like it's like most sports now.
Well, like I said, Travis Best is a good friend of mine, and he said you guys were there for game one. They had all the guys in, and that's. I can't speak, but he said he had a wonderful time. So I think it's every city and every ownership group is different. You know what I mean? You have a lot of new owners now that I don't want to say it's a hobby, but it's a business, but it's not necessarily their business. They treat it like a corporation instead of like, the involvement. You're just talking about the Spurs. The Spurs, there's a family tree there. Everyone's connected. University of Kansas, everyone's connected. That's how Sacramento used to be, for me. And I didn't even play basketball, but I worked out there every single day. Al Bianchini, our strength coach, Al
Yeah.
was amazing. The ownership group treated, athletes that came from there and the people that came there like family. So now, yeah, part of the reason for me even moving to Vegas was the city changed, you know what I mean? And it didn't, and it just wasn't for me, so to speak. Unless you're building houses there, it seems like they didn't care about anything else, and I care about all people. I'm a giver like Scott. Scott, I know you have foundations and you do a lot of stuff of giving and all that, but it's hard to get stuff from people that have the means to give it.
Yeah.
So you feel like you're pulling teeth. That's my aspect on it.
Yeah, I have a question then. I have a question then
You're
for
not the first person to
for
say
when we
that.
go back to when you're playing days in Kansas, like you said, like the goes back to the inventor of basketball, right? So like you guys had such a good time in college and everything. You guys were playing the camaraderie and all that stuff. Do you feel like the reason that we've gotten away from those kinds of things is because like there's too much corporation, too much money involved, and all that stuff, where we kind of like have taken away from the love of the game and even why it was originally invented? Because I'm sure, do you know the story of why basketball was originally invented? Since you went there,
Yeah, he just wanted to keep the boys in
keep
shape
them in shape. It was also
in between
it was
football and
also to
baseball.
spread the gospel.
Oh, I didn't
Yeah,
know that.
so basketball was kind of a way because like it was a very cheap. It's just you need a ball and a hoop, right? You don't have to. It's not a complicated game, so they use that to like spread Christianity essentially. So it's a kind of an interest.
No,
Yeah,
I
it's
didn't
kind
know
of an
that.
interesting sport how it kind of went like almost the exact opposite. Now it's so corporate involved and everything, right? It's interesting. So
But to go back, you're talking about the financial
yeah.
part. I always say this. And this is just my own
Hmm.
testimony. When you're done, you're basically done. They
Oh
don't,
yeah.
our earning period our earning window is so small. I don't care if you play 15 years, 20 years. You think about it, you have the majority of your life to live. Most people are working the majority of their life, so you have to get all you can get because my experiences are when you're done, the teams don't come asking you and looking for you to take care of you and to see if you're all right and do things. So when people say you earn too much, they don't understand what we did do to our body. Like Scott was just referring to his a broken
Hmm.
back. 'Cause you're playing with a broken back. I've had 6 rotator cuff, shaved bone, labrums, shoulder replacement, and I'm out there playing because you're scared someone's going to take your
Oh
job. You
yeah.
know what I mean? So and when it's over, it's not a thank you. It's not anything. It's on to the next.
Yeah.
Yeah, on to the
Yeah.
next. And we know that going in. So I don't think guys get
Oh, I
paid too
didn't say
much.
that. I wasn't
Do I
saying that.
think?
I wasn't saying guys get paid too much because, like,
Okay.
yeah, that's the common misconception. I'm saying overall in general, like the corporations essentially take away like what people love about the game, right? And what also creates like, they put the wrong people at the top too, in general, right?
I would say
Yeah,
that. I
yeah,
would say that you take away
yeah.
the human element. The guys that know their sport or know their
Hmm.
business. Why would you put a tech guy as your GM when he knows
Well,
nothing
it's just
about
why do
basketball?
we
You know
always
what I mean?
look to the past, to the great teams, right, and to the great days of the play of playing, right? Are we going to look back on these eras and be like, oh, that was a great era? Are we going to look back and see like, people like LeBron flopping all day and like because the cameras don't lie anymore and people share these things, so that's what I'm curious about. You know,
What, what, well, I know in baseball, the teams that are winning have baseball players leading them, baseball
absolutely,
coaches on the field
yeah,
with them, and they're mixing in the analytics with it. They just don't go total
yeah,
160 and eliminate that. Those are bad teams because when you have to have a human element. This, no matter what sport it is, it's
yeah,
tough. You got to be able to. Hey, you got to coach every individual different. You all have the same team
Hmm.
rules, but what makes Scott goes, the coach has to know that. What makes
yeah.
me goes, that
But like,
they have to know that, and they have to put their arm around you when you're going
yeah.
through a tough time. And I think that's what people
Well,
don't
I
understand.
just had that one
It,
question for you guys
we,
since
we,
you
we,
play professionally, right? And you just said it to me. Like you said it. You guys were, you if you get injured or if you don't perform right, like the next guy's right in line right behind you to take your job, right? So it's like, is that,
That's why you just
but
play
is that
through
the
it.
kind of mentality that should be, is that what we should be like teaching the world, I guess? Like that's the way I know that's the way kind of the world works in a sense, but like, do you think that you're getting the best out of the players that way?
I would say, and like I
Like
said, we're here
out
for
of
Scott,
fear,
but
like out of
I
fear.
would say,
Like, don't you think like out of
yeah,
love, like you perform
well,
better out of love, like when somebody coaches you and you know that they care about you and they know that like, oh hey, like if I fall, I need to
I
get.
think those coaches are. I think those coaches are
Yeah,
gone. I think
I
those
agree.
coaches with the relationships
I
are
agree.
gone. Yeah, but I
Well, that's
think
why I have the question for you, because you
sometimes
guys had
I
both of
remember.
them, right? Like you guys had.
I think those coaches are gone. I think now it's all about relationships. If you're a yes man, you stay longer. If you don't ruffle feathers, you stay longer. I mean, you look at Dusty Baker, who Scott knows too. I mean, this man
Yep.
won 100 games every year and he gets fired. But you got guys keeping their job that win 60 games a year. You know what I mean? I
Yep.
mean, how does the math add up? And for me, sometimes they used to say, I'd rather have an 80% of Vonnie than 100%
Yeah.
of this guy. This guy can't play every day. Some guys are, you can play every day. Some guys you can't. And I just think, Scott, I want your perspective. What do you think on,
Well,
on his,
I think that Greg, you said it right when it starts at the top, and I will reference the Maloofs because Sacramento. We're talking about Sacramento, and they made it a family organization. I didn't play for the owners before them. I played only for the Maloofs when I was with Sacramento, and they definitely incorporated family into everything. They're brothers. They brought their brothers in. They brought their sister in. Their mother was at almost all the games. They made it a family organization. They talked about this. They talked about that. They put their money where their mouth was. And I think that the that mentality is gone
Yeah.
from a lot of places, because they were like, hey, we know we want to win. We know that this isn't our main thing. We're going to hire people that know how to win. And nowadays, like Greg said, I agree with you. A lot of what you said, Greg, is they just put some, I'm sorry, nerds in the front office, and they're like trying to run egos and manage these different personalities through the front office. And it's like, you can't do that. You have to have basketball players talk to basketball players. You can't have some guy come in with a computer and say, hey, look, stop stepping on the 3-point line. Take 2 steps back and shoot the ball. Have you ever shot a ball? Well, no, but I got all the numbers here and blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, I'm not listening to you. And so that creates that coldness, that creates that corporate mentality among athletes where it's like, well, all they care about is me not stepping on the line and wasting a point. I need to step back. And I was talking to Peja not too long ago, Peja Stokovich. He's talking about his son. I said, well, what's going on? How's his prospects? He goes, man, they don't want him to shoot a 19-footer. I said, man, that game is disappearing. The long twos. And I heard it on young people talking about it. It's like, oh man, that's the dumbest shot in basketball. You're shooting a 20-foot jumper. It's like, no, it's not, because your pass, you can pump fake somebody, take one dribble, and if you can knock that shot down, that is a threat, and that is gone. Kevin Garnett took a lot of flack recently for how many of those jumpers he took just inside the 3-point line. It's like, well, that was his range, and it always went in. If he takes that step back, it's not going in as much. And also, there's people pushing out on him, little guys pushing out on him that are going to limit his game. So his ability to pump fake a big guy, take one step, and shoot just inside the 3-point line was a monster threat. And that's disappearing because of analytics. It's disappearing because of the nerds in the front office that are saying, well, you get another point for just stepping back one thing, and it's ruining the game. There's no big men. It's not because there's no big men. It's because they're being told, well, you have to shoot threes to justify your ability, your value to our organization. I don't want Zach Edey shooting threes. I want that 7'4" big body in the post dunking on people and shooting hooks over them, because that's what he's really good at. There's other guys that can shoot the threes, and people were, I'd go back and play in the summer, just a quick offshoot. I'd go back to Kansas and play in the summer. I'm bringing the ball up, I'm shooting threes, and they're like, damn, I didn't know you could do that. I'm like, well, yeah, I'm one of the 450 best in the world, but I don't do that during the NBA games because I'm playing with Peja Stokovich. I'm playing with Reggie Miller. I'm playing with Mike Bibby. I'm playing with Ray Allen. Some of the greatest shooters in the history of the game. They're really good at shooting threes. I'm really good at knocking people down, setting screens, getting rebounds if they miss, and blocking shots. So that's what I do when I'm playing with the best in the world, because I'm one of the best in the world at that. They're one of the best in the world at that. They can't rebound for shit. So I'll do that. Let me do that.
Yeah.
Excuse my
you know what?
language.
No, you can say that on here, but that's what it is. I tell Josh this all the time. I said, I'll take Fernando Vina, who too from Sacramento. He's a leadoff hitter. He took a lot of pitches, that was his strength.
Yeah.
But like Scott says, as the nerds come in, we don't want you we want you taking pictures, but now we want you to hit home runs. Instead of Fernando's like, my job is to get on base. So then when Bonnie and whoever come up, the run producers come up, we set the table. And that's the same thing. Why would Scott be out there shooting threes? You're making it easy. Speaking of one of your former teams, the Celtics, I mean, the first 2 games they shot, I mean, what were they? 12 for 50 something? And you know what I mean? It's crazy. Yeah, and that's where we're going. Same thing in baseball. Until the pitch clock, people couldn't watch baseball because the guy on second base, guy on third base, you start off with a runner on second base in extra innings, and you're playing 18 and 19 extra innings.
Yep.
Because you can't move a guy over. I mean, you have to have some of the human element. The good teams win because they have good coaches and they have people play the game and they know the mental part of the up and downs of the grind. It's a grind.
Well, it's
that marathon.
Isn't
it
also why it's exciting? Like, that's why it's exciting. The game's exciting because it's unpredictable, right? You guys play your hearts out. You guys do, you know what I mean? Like, so if it's a computer program, if they're running analytics, that's literally why it's not exciting anymore. They're telling people you need to do this because of this, that, and that's, you're taking they literally took the human element out of the game, in my opinion. I watched the game my entire life. I didn't play professionally like you guys, but I did watch you guys play. I watched you guys play. I watched the next gen play. I watched the generation before that play, right? So when you see all these things unfold and you actually look at it from an outsider's perspective and you see, and the only difference is the inflation of media, right? The inflation of media on the games itself, which inflates the money because with media brings more money, right? And then you put the wrong people, that you're looking up to, right? Essentially, and then the people get dissatisfied with the game, essentially, and so then they're trying to run it back. Like, how do we get people excited for the game? And that's what they're doing with the analytics and all this stuff because they lost a lot of fans over the last 20 years.
But I think all the complaints I'm hearing, I think that they're saying basketball, not the players are bad, but it's a bad product. Just run down.
It's from the top down. It's from you said the Maloofs earlier. You said the Maloofs earlier, right? So, like, I just interviewed Gavin recently on another project, right? And we talked about the same thing, and it's like that's what it is. He's like, I love that game. I love those teams. I love the players. That's the thing, right? So, like, when to create something good, it really is like a godly thing, right? Love creates, and like basically everything else kind of destroys it, essentially, right? In a sense, because it's just like.
But it's also being smart enough to know what you're good at, and then putting people in position because you're only as good as your team. And unfortunately, a lot of guys, as you said, nerds or Ivy Leaguers or guys with computers, their whole life that they've been a test at, and they are smart, they are brilliant, but it's being outsmarting the next guy. And I'm smarter than you and want to be known for something. Whereas all the good organizations, I remember growing up, man, it was just even from Little League to whatever, it's a team. It's the people you put around you, and everyone says, who was your best baseball manager? Bruce Bochy, and I played for other good guys, but he let Davey Lopes do the outfield and the base running. Davey gave us a steal sign when we were ready to go on first base. He had Flannery doing the infielders. He had Peach doing what he's doing. Boch, he wasn't intimidated or scared where he had to be in control of everything. Now some of these guys have to be in control of the total factor. But what do you think of the game right now, Scott? What is the health of NBA basketball, Scott?
So I've always used the analogy that basketball is jazz music, and it's always changing, and it always will change based on the best players of any given time. So when you look at the periods of history of the NBA, there were different phases, and the game was played differently, this point, and then this point, and then this point. So now the referees have adapted to this style of play, and it's not my favorite version of basketball. And the reason why is because one of the things we've been talking about, you've got a lot of guys that are extremely talented. I'm not taking away from their talent. They're all really talented, but you've got guys doing every single position to a marginal level when they could be doing one or two positions at the top, like most exciting level. I don't want to see LeBron James shooting threes. I want to see him attacking the basket and dunking on people and not flopping. And I don't want to see Wemby shooting threes because, oh, wow, he shoots whatever, 35%. Big deal. Go get the ball in the post and shoot a hook shot over somebody, do some skill work with your footwork in the post. And fine, you can drive past a couple people, but I just don't like the idea of everybody on the court doing exactly the same thing. It's 5-around-1 basketball. And in my opinion, the biggest culprit, the biggest reason for that, the way the game is played now, is AAU basketball. It's travel hoops. It's ruined the game because they don't care about developing players. They're just trying to get money. And that's where it all starts. That's where all the soulless talk about corporations ruining sports in basketball, it starts at AAU. I would never allow my kids to travel for any sport because I think AAU is destroying basketball, because you've got kids now that all their mentality is, well, I got to shoot threes. I got to bring the ball up. I got to, don't pay attention to defense. I don't care if my team wins or loses. I got to get my numbers or I'm not going to make the all-star team of my AAU league. And then it goes on from there that the coaches in college are recruiting the AAU coaches and having to hire them. That's corruption. Just to get their player, and they got to get a shoe contract with that team. We changed. We were a Converse school until we got Paul Pierce. Then we became a Nike school. I wonder why. That was, and coach was adamant about it. And so that's my point, is it starts with AAU, and it changes the mentality of a kid. Instead of playing 8 games a week and practicing once, they should be practicing 6 days a week and playing once or twice. That's why European players come over here and have so much better skills and are developed, and players. Look at Jokic. I mean, dude hardly tries. He's not in shape, but he's the best player in the league right now because of his diverse skill set. And it's because he practiced his butt off in the European growing up over there, as opposed to just playing, pounding the ball one-on-one. And that's what is ruining American basketball. It's AAU.
Wow.
It's funny.
I don't want to sound like a grumpy old man, but that's my take.
It's funny you say that because, I asked C Webb, your former teammate, this one time. We were somewhere. My oldest son Corey was there, and he was playing at Jesuit, this and that. And C Webb said, "What position do you play?" And and Corey was like, "Well, I'm a 4 and I'm this and that." He says, "You see Peja? You're not going to be as tall as Peja, and he can dribble, he can shoot, he can set." He says, "You don't have a position. The European basketball players don't have a position. They're basketball players. That's what you need to become. Become a basketball player instead of being defined by a position." You know what I mean? So to speak on what you just spoke about, that's exactly right. Charles Barkley said the same thing. He says they're tough, they're gritty, they know the game of basketball. They just don't know basketball. They know where people should be. They know what their teammates are going to be doing. And to speak on what Scott just said, it's, hey man, and they're hungry too. They weren't given shoe contracts at 10, 11, 12, Scott, but you know what I remember too? I'm jumping, flip-flopping, how charismatic you were. I mean, you were like the Dwight Dennis Rodman before the Dwight Dennis Rodman with the hairdo, the just the carefree lifestyle and having fun. And when did that start? When did the ponytail and the rest of it? When did all that stuff start?
I've always been a guy that experimented with my hair. I don't have any hair anymore, so I don't get to grow it out and color it anymore. But I'm still doing stuff with my facial hair because it keeps growing. But I dyed my hair for the first time, I think, in 7th grade down in San Diego. And so it's just, it was always what does this look like? What's it going to look like? I never did it. And Roy Williams said it once that really was more succinctly than I could have put up in my brain at that point. But he said, Scott, when I showed up to Kansas my sophomore year for media day, I dyed my hair blonde. I didn't tell anybody. I just dyed my hair blonde and went into media day. And Roy looked at me and he just shook his head and he pulled me out of the room. He goes, if any of your teammates had pulled that garbage, I would have kicked them off my team. But he goes, son, you have a different mindset than anybody I've ever coached. And he said, if I thought for a second that you were doing all the things that you do to get attention, that would be a problem. But I know you just do things that get attention. You're not doing them in order to get attention. And that's it. That is the perfect example or description of my entire life. I've always just been me. I do what I want to do. I've always had a lot of discipline and work ethic. But when it comes to my appearance, I'm like, let's see what this looks like.
Yeah.
And it's never been to try to get people to look at me a different way or treat me a different way. It's just, I want to see what it looks like with blonde hair and tips, or
Cool.
ponytails in my beard,
He let you be you. He recognized that for him to get the best version of you was not to change you, but let you be yourself.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think that's what's missing too. They want to clone everybody now too.
Yep.
So Scott, tell us what's going on. I know post basketball, give us an update of what's going on, and then I know because I was following you and sending heartfelt prayers, about real life stuff. You know what I mean? Basketball's a game, but like you said, we have a fraternity, we have a brotherhood. But like I said, playing two different sports, but being in the same city, knowing you, I felt like it was part of me too. You know what I mean? That knowing somebody that and you're 10 years younger than me, and that can happen. That somebody says, what's happening today? Hey man, I'm just glad to be here. Glad to wake up today. You know what I mean? And I think you can, tell us what that's really about.
Yeah, well, it's been a long time since basketball. I've done a lot, broadcasting. I did some small movies. I was acting a little bit, which I thought was fun, but I didn't want to move to LA. So I just that kind of was over before it started. Family man first, and I wasn't going to relocate my family to go be a part-time actor, and play these small roles and just be a thug in movies, because at my size, that's pretty much all I'm going to be able to do. They can't fit me in a frame with a leading actor or actress. So you're constantly just pushed into, you can be the big mean guy in the background or whatever, So there was that. Then like I said, broadcasting. I've always been involved in charitable causes wherever I am, whether it's Sacramento or Indiana or Boston or Cleveland or wherever. So we've done that. We kept busy with that. Raising kids, and went on reality TV because that sounded like it'd be fun. Did Survivor, got 8th place, had a blast. Got edited into a villain, which I thought was hilarious. Some of my friends were like, "I'm never watching Survivor again. They showed you looking like a mean person. That's not you at all." I was like, it's okay. It's reality TV. It made a better story with me being a villain. So that's why they edited that way. I'm not saying I didn't do and say all the things I said and did, but I was also playing for $1 million. I wasn't trying to make friends.
That's crazy.
Enough friends. But it was fun. Had a good time there. And then in 2019, my wife got breast cancer, and so we had a reset button there in our family, and she's fine and she's cancer free now. But that was my turn to be her caregiver, and as we look back, it was nothing. Really, I mean, Sheila will say, "Oh, come on! All I did was get surgery, and that took care of it." And that's true. She had a very easy path with what was. They still don't know where it came from or why she got it. But yeah, she got a double mastectomy, and the surgery ended up taking care of it. She didn't have to do chemo. She didn't have to do radiation. And so that was a reset button for our relationship. Not that we needed one, but there was that and personal life and kids dealing with that. And then, the kids get older, some go to college and all that. And then a few years later, I'm get a virus and it attacks my heart, and I'm in heart failure immediately. And so I was on the couch for about three years. And tried lots of procedures, lots of drugs, and it just wasn't healing. So that's how they figured out that it had to be a genetic issue that virus brought out, because if it had just been a virus that attacked my heart, they could have killed it. It was all it was all electrical. My plumbing's always been fine. I've had my heart checked every year because my dad died when I was 16. He was only 54 years old. And so I've just always had that concern that maybe it was going to be something that I'd have to be worried about. Obviously, it didn't affect me in my younger years. I played in the NBA, never had any heart issues. So it's definitely something that hit my dad later in life in his mid-40s. And I have two older siblings that are in heart failure, and it hit them in their mid-40s. And that's when it hit me. So it might have been that I was going to get it anyway, whether I got that virus or not. But it's pretty much the same track as my dad. He got a virus and it put him in heart failure. And, in 1991, they couldn't transplant a giant. And so fast forward to 2023, when my certain doctor here, after 3 years, 2.5 years of dealing with me and heart failure, he's like, look, we got to start talking about transplant. I thought, oh no, I'm going to die just like my dad. That was not the news I wanted to hear. I was like, no, there's got to be there's something else we can do. And he just said, no, we've really got to talk about it. I said, well, I'm going to die. And so I had to learn that the world has changed. The doctors have gotten better. The technology has gotten better. Drugs have gotten better. And they said they were able to find somebody, if the man was at least 6'3", that would probably be a heart that would be big enough to transplant into me. Well, I've gotten to meet my donor's family. I got my transplant in February of 2024, and it was awful. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I've had lots of surgeries. You've had lots of surgeries, Greg. You know what surgery is like. It's not fun. Rehab is not fun. Fixing broken joints or bones or whatever, it's not fun. This one was the worst one. I realized after 6 months, when I finally started feeling not sick all the time, I was just sick. I felt better. My brain was better, and I have good days where I never had good days leading up to it. But the brain fog was gone because my heart was pumping, and then my cardiologist at Vanderbilt down in Nashville, where I had my transplant, he said, you weren't just recovering from surgery, you were recovering from 3 years of your heart not working. So the rest of your body was shutting down too. And that's why I've learned that a lot of people that end up getting heart transplants get a kidney or a liver at the same time, because when your heart stops working, other stuff breaks down too. And so I was not only rehabbing from surgery, I was rehabbing from 3 years of being on a couch and my body shutting down. And so that's why I was sick. There was just stuff coming out of me. I just smelled all the time. Like there'd be days I take 3 showers because I just stunk. Because it was just my body waking back up and getting back to a new life. It's not my old life. It's not great. I don't feel awesome all the time, but I feel a lot better than I did when I was in heart failure. And it's a different life. But going through that and learning so much about that, it caused my wife to become a donor herself, and me too. We were never donors before, and she said, you know what, there's got to be something we can do about this. So she started a charity, and it's called Pearls of Life. It's named after my dad, Pearl, and she's the president. There's a treasurer. My doctor here, the cardiologist here at St. Vincent's in Indiana, is on the board. And then they have one other board member. I'm not on the board officially. It makes it simpler for me to give speeches and solicit worldwide without breaking any rules, because the IRS, they really want everybody to pay too much. So if I'm on the board, say, and I'm soliciting Pearls of Life in California, then the charity has to be registered in California. And we have to pay money to tax in California. It's like, wait a minute, I just give a speech, But if I'm here and I'm a voluntary spokesman and I go to California and I give a speech and tell everybody about my wife's charity. So that's why we've done it. It just makes it a lot simpler that way. I don't want to be famous anymore, Greg, Josh. I would prefer to just be an unknown person. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't help my wife's charity that my former notoriety is coming back. I've gotten more popular again because the story is broken. It's gone nationwide. It's gone worldwide. I just spoke at an international conference in Boston a couple of weeks ago, and there was thousands of heart failure specialists and liver failure specialists from all over the world. Last year's conference was in Prague. I was like, call me back when it's in Prague. I've never been there.
Right.
I've been to Boston. They're like, that's why you're coming to Boston. I was like, well, I know, but where's it next year? They're like, Toronto. I was like, been there.
Yeah.
What about after that? They're like, New Zealand. I said, call me in 2 years.
That's funny.
I've never been to New Zealand. No, but I'm joking. But the ESPN is making an E60. Well, they're done. It's coming out on Father's Day.
Congrats.
And so that will help spread the message. Yeah, well, it was their idea, and I said no.
Yeah.
They when I broke, I had been keeping my heart failure secret, just dealing with it with my family until it was like I'm getting a transplant. So I finally went public because there was just so many people asking questions. Why aren't you coming to my golf tournament anymore? Why aren't you coming to this? Why aren't you doing that? We never see you anymore. What's going on? And I was tired of lying to people. Just, I'm not feeling that good. Just, you caught me on a bad day. It was every day. I couldn't travel. I wasn't feeling good most of the time. So I finally went public with it, and ESPN heard about it, and they contacted my wife and said, "Would you do it?" And I said, "No, absolutely not. I don't like Disney. I don't like ESPN. Just personal."
Hey,
And so I'm not a big fan of those corporations. But then they sent me a couple of movies that they had made. They did Alex Smith's E60 when he broke his leg and almost lost his leg and his life because of that infection. They did Matt Millen's heart transplant, former GM of the Detroit Lions, former great New York Giant football player. I loved watching him play. And then they sent me one of a young lady that had a double lung transplant. And so this same guy had made all those 3 movies, and I watched them and I cried during every one of them. And so I was like, okay, if you're doing the movie for me, then you can do it. And so that's what led us to this. It's coming out on Father's Day. They've interviewed me, and they did a whole bunch of research on my dad. So it's more of a father-son story than anything else. It is about my heart transplant, but my dad dying of heart failure before they could transplant a giant. The doctor said, I remember these words. I was in the hospital with my dad, and the doctor said, "Look, I'll put you on a transplant list, but there's no heart that's going to come in that's going to be big enough. Anybody that's got a heart big enough for you is going to have a diseased heart also." So
how tall was your dad?
Huh?
How tall was your dad?
My dad was 54.
No, how tall was
he? He was 6'9".
Oh shoot, he was a giant, huh? But back then too, right?
Yeah. And he played basketball all the way into his mid-30s, actually. And so, no, not in the NBA, but he played, pretty actively and was healthy and never had any heart issues until he got a virus and it attacked his heart. And he wasn't skinny; he was bigger, but he wasn't like morbidly obese. But it just wasn't a possibility back then. And so, actually, when I gave that speech at the conference a couple of weeks ago, I thanked them. I was like, "Thanks for being the people that stood on the shoulders of giants, because you people," and I pointed at my doctors that were there that had done my transplant. I said, "You learned and got better and saved my life when the people before you couldn't save my dad's life. So thank you." And I said, "Just keep being giants. Go stand on the shoulders, and you be the people that future generations of brilliant minds stand on your shoulders and look back and say, you know what, we can do this transplant, or we can do this technique now they couldn't do in 2025. So, things have changed since 1991, and I'm here because of it.
Yeah, God is good, man. And I'm glad you're here. You've always been good to me, and like I said, I want to thank you for always supporting me too. With Vaughn's Valley, my son has type 1 diabetes, and going through stuff and seeing stuff. People don't realize, that athletes is, we're human too. We feel, we hurt, we're emotional, and we go through the same thing that everybody else does. And I'm gonna say it's a blessing to have you. My last question: one of your former teammates. We're going to talk about 916 one more time. Mike Bibby, head coach, Sac State. What you got? What do you like? You like it?
I heard about that. I like it a lot better than him coaching AAU. He's got basketball in his blood, and his dad. And so I don't know much about his coaching style, but I am excited to see that he's out there in Sacramento now and got that job. And I wish him the greatest success. I think he's a great dude, and I was on his podcast about a year ago with Eddie House, and I don't know if that one ever came out, but we did a good interview there, and it's always good to see former teammates do well, and so I'm very excited for Mike, and I hope he does really well at Sac State.
Awesome.
Okay, second part to my question. I know you have to go. We have to go too, but what do my Kings need? What do my Sacramento Kings need? Another teammate, Doug Christie. I mean, he's back in charge. What do we need to get over the hump? If you were the GM and you're putting this team together, because I look at Indiana, they got 2 guys that come off the bench that are 6'10", 6'11", and run that are wings, and it just seems like we like playing small ball. I mean, that's my personal opinion. But what do we need if this was your team? What would be the first thing that you would do?
Fire the owner.
If you could not fire the owner.
Well, you can't, because I have a friend that's one of the minority owners, and he would like to.
There you go.
We both have a couple of them too.
Yeah. They're like, I didn't realize what I was signing when I signed it. I was just happy to be part of the group. And now I'm like, man, I could buy and sell that guy several times. I wish I had done that before. So anyway, um, the it, it's always hard in a small market. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but it's always hard in a small market because your superstars don't want to stay. Now Giannis, who had promised he was going to be a Milwaukee Buck until they win a championship, now I've heard a rumor that he might be taken off, and it's hard because you said it earlier, Greg. We're all looking for our bag. We're all looking to take care of ourselves forever. Which, with the short amount of time we have to make it, we have to make it last for the rest of our lives because we don't have any other skills.
Right.
For the most part. And, there's guys that are lucky and that have personalities and can make money in other ways. But for the most part, you just know how to do one thing. It's play your game. And then when you can't play anymore, what are you supposed to do for the rest of your life? So I understand why players don't want to stay in a small market because there's so many more opportunities in bigger markets to make money off the court. But so that's one of the challenges of a small market team. So what one thing would I do? I mean, you have to, at some point in a small market, you have to ease the purse strings and you got to spend some money on the roster, and you got to buy some of those big time players, even if you can get them in a trade or a short term thing. Which, yeah, you're sacrificing long term for a short term, and you try to. It's a gamble because it may not work. Like it didn't work when we were there. The Maloofs opened up and they were like, "Screw it, let's do it." They bought and they spent a lot of money getting superstars in, Chris Webber and Vlade, and just put together that ragtag team that turned into chemistry factory. I mean, it was just didn't matter what after that. It didn't matter what piece they brought in off the bench or from another team. It just worked because we were like, no, you're part of the King Show now. You don't worry about you no more. You worry about us. And that was what made that team special. But it started with opening up the purse strings. And so, how do you force chemistry? You can't. You have to get teammates,
right? It has to come from the top.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. It's like when you've got an owner that is putting tech people in charge of things, and I'm not specifically talking about Vivek, I'm just talking about any owner that is putting tech people in charge of humans and basketball players or baseball players or football players, you're going to have a disconnect. You're not going to have loyalty. You're not going to have chemistry. You're going to have guys going in and punching the clock, going, all right, I'm here. I don't want to be here, but I'm making a lot of money. So I'm here. I'm going to get my numbers. Don't really care if we win or lose because they don't care. All they want to do is make sure I'm here, make sure that I'm playing the game the way they want me to play it because the analytics are telling them to tell me that I got to take a step back or I got to shoot more free throws or whatever, And so when they're micromanaging from that cold and heartless business perspective, which I know at some levels it has to happen, but not to the level that I think it is happening. That's hard for anybody to coach. That's hard for anybody to be a GM. It's hard for anybody to be a player when your organization is so focused on the numbers. At some point, you got to throw some of the stuff out the window and say, hey, guys, let's just play. Let's play some ball. We got to play. We got to win. We got to have some passion, and we got to have some respect. And if you don't have those things, you're never going to have chemistry, and you're never going to have a winning program. You're never going to have a program, period. You're going to have a team.
Right. And you got to be committed. You can't have a new coach every 2 years, right? Or you're
consistency.
It's just like some of those players that QBs have a different offensive coordinator every year, a different coach. Like being down here in Vegas, the Raiders every year, a different coach. They finally got stability though. They finally went and got someone. He might be past his prime, but having guys that live down the street and across the street that are on the team, they're like, hey man, this for the first time we have somebody that has done it, somebody that's been successful, and they're leaving him alone. You know what I mean? And they're letting him do what he wants to do. And I think that's why you want a stability, right? You want to be able to have something in consistency that you can come to every day, and you know what's going to happen. But with that, Scott, hey man, I thank you, bro. I'll see you at the Sacramento Gold Rush. In a couple months. Give you a big hug, and look forward to hanging out with you.
Thank you, Scott, so much.
Thanks for having me on, Greg. Thanks, Josh. Thank you. Can't wait to see you in person, Greg.
Okay, yeah.